I'm going to make this one short. I'm going to do my best just to make a point and something to think about. As I've heard someone else say, and I'm in agreement, and it's what the scriptures teach, and that's what I'm getting, that's what it teaches, you know. But Christianity in general rejects the Old Testament scriptures as any kind of authority. It's just a cute story. It's sad that I have to say it like that, but it is. It's true. 100% true. They don't believe it. They don't believe it. This video will prove it. Just this one thing will prove it, that they don't believe anything at all. They're pagans, unbelievers. Did Messiah live by bread alone, himself alone? No, he didn't. He denied himself and abided in the Father and kept his commandments. That's what he did. That's who he is. That's what he did. He's the what does it mean? He is the truth, the way, the life. They don't have a foundation of what it means to follow after him. What does it mean to follow Messiah? What do they make up things of what it says? Sit in a chair and believe in Jesus and fall off the chair shaking and vomiting and, you know, shaking violently from whatever spirit they received. And that's it. You know, he saved me and it's done. It's over. I'm saved. I don't sin anymore because I'm saved. That's what it means to be saved. You never sin again. Past tense. You know, and it's interesting. I've done word studies on some of these verses and seeing how people reject it. You know, one of the verses is, you know, Paul, I think, you believe and you shall be saved, and they don't like the translations that say you are being saved, even though that's, from what I've looked into and researched, the Greek actually has that proper tense. It's a continuous saving. It's not one and done and now, you know, because if that was true, if everyone was past tense saved, that means they wouldn't sin anymore the rest of their life. But they don't agree with that, obviously, that's what it means. That's what saved, past tense, glorified salvation means. But they have a different understanding. And I'm not sure they even understand when they say I've been saved, what that even means. It's not the definition Scripture gives. You know, the Messiah didn't believe in the Father and then he just, you know, I was saved past tense, and now he walked it the rest of his life up till the bitter end for him, a very bitter ending, you know, a rough, tough, unimaginable ending, because if he was a full-blown sinner, that's still a rough ending, and it's, you know, dying and being nailed to the stake, you know, these are, no matter who you are, but he didn't sin. That makes it 1,000 times rougher. You know, I think you can see why, because he knew he kept the Father's way and commandments and did what was right, exposed evil, taught truth, the only truth, that he is the way, and he is the way in that he lived the Father's will. That's what it means to follow after him. He is the way, and you do have to believe in him. There is no other way. It is by faith, but it means more than just I believe in him and that's it, and you stop there and it's over, because what they say is believe what he said, not what the rest of his word says. You know, I've seen this, and this is a very confusing, and it can sound right on the surface, but after seeking truth and looking into these things, I found them to be false. Yes, we agree we should follow his commandments. His commandments are different than the Father's commandments. They sort of twist it like that. Believe what he said, and he didn't go over every little commandment, therefore he didn't command to do all those things, right? Sort of something like that. Okay. Now, this is where it gets, as it does in many places, just one example where it gets twisted, or it gets corrupted and contradicts. He said, do we follow his commandments? Yes, we should follow what he said. Everyone says, all Christianity, yeah, we should follow what he says, believe what he said, keep his commandments. He said, man shall not live by bread alone. That's what he said. He taught that to his disciples. He taught it. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Father. Is that a commandment? Yeah, it is. He taught that. His disciples knew it. He taught them that. Man shall not live by bread alone. That's one of his things, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Father. So did he need to list all these commandments separately? No, he just did right there. Live by every word. Does every word include Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and all the other books? Isn't that every word? Did he say some of the word? Why did he quote from the Old Testament? Why did he quote from the scriptures when he was tempted? Why did he do that? Why did the disciples and the apostles quote from the scriptures? Because that's the word. That's all they had. That is the scriptures. New Testament wasn't complete and ready and to be read everywhere. Especially Messiah's time. There was nothing yet. Nobody wrote about him. The only thing that existed are the scriptures, which he says the prophets, the law, the Torah, three things, because three is a big number. The prophets, Torah, and the writings. It's divided in those three groups, or psalm, as most people know and agree with. The writings are referring to the psalm, which has a lot of words in there, and a lot of important words in there, but all of his words are important. There's no mention of Apocrypha or the Book of Enoch. There's no hint of it, besides the one verse that, what is it, Jude, that quotes what seems to be from there, which I've explained before how that could be and not be an inspired book, of which it's not, because of its tons of contradictions. That you can quote somebody, you can quote an unbeliever that says something right, and people are familiar with that unbeliever's teachings, and then bring people together and teach off of it. That's what happened. That's what I'm convinced of that happened. He quoted what people would have been familiar with. But anyways, the New Testament as a whole, all the quotes, if you take them all together and look at them carefully, they're all from the Torah, the law, the first 5 books. That's very easily established. Everyone knows that. Quotes from there. The prophets, the only prophets they quoted from are those in Genesis through Malachi, and over and over again. And the Psalm writings. The Book of Enoch doesn't prophesy of anything. It literally is the words that are in there that are right are quotes from the scriptures. It doesn't give any new prophecy of the Messiah like the scriptures do on who he is, when he would come, how that he would die and be resurrected on the 3rd day. It doesn't give any. Book of Enoch doesn't do this. Jasher and Jubilees are just copies of parallels with Genesis through Exodus. It doesn't offer any new prophecy. Thus saith Yahuwah anything. I highly recommend it if you want to read them, but don't believe them as inspired scripture. Just stay away from that belief. I'm not trying to hide secrets or hide anything. I genuinely don't believe in those books as inspired. They're not. The scriptures don't contradict like they contradict left and right. But people put a thumb down on the video, probably most likely before they even watch it all. They just thumb it down because they don't like the title. Nobody's proven me wrong yet. Prove me wrong. Go line upon line and show that what I said are contradictions are not contradictions. If you can't do that, then they're contradictions, therefore they're heretical. They're false. Because the Spirit doesn't contradict itself and inspire contradictions that can't be reconciled. So then Messiah's command, as Christians would even acknowledge, yeah, we should follow his commands, which they reduce to love one another. That's it. That was the command. The scripture should have been Genesis. He created everything and then love one another. Done. Over. That's how they teach it. That's how they teach it. That's what it is. You could see how it's got some truth in there, but then it severely perverts it and mixes it with lies. They just claim that that's what they're doing. They claim that they're loving their neighbor as themselves. I've even seen some things written that, since it says all these laws and prophets hang on these two things, that those laws and prophets and commandments should be hung. They should hung to dry and die and nail it and kill it. They use the hanging as in a negative way like that. It's a grand summary, and it's true. It is reduced to those two powerful commandments: love the Father with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. But if people actually think that's what he taught, what Christianity teaches, they're in serious delusion. They're seriously blinded. What does that mean, to love your neighbor as yourself? It means not to commit adultery or even think of it. So that those who do that don't love their neighbor as themselves, do they? They don't like that definition, do they? Those that practice witchcraft, they don't love their neighbor as themselves. Sorry, I don't. That's the world's definition of love. All the worldly musicians and rock stars and heavy metal and everyone, all of them, they love their people and they love. That's the world's definition of love. It's perversion. Love is keeping it the true way, his way. That's what love is. And you can't love the Father unless you keep his commandments. It's not even possible. That's the definition of love. It has nothing to do with disobedience. Disobedience proves you don't love him. You're a liar, like James says. Those who say they know him, love him, don't keep his commandments are a liar. And since he endorsed and officially lived it and says to love yourself as your neighbor, he's saying keep all those commandments in the Torah. All those commandments are, summed up in a grand statement: love your neighbor as yourself, of which that's in the Torah too. It's not like he taught something brand new, like so many teach. It's just that they didn't have the proper understanding and they weren't doing it. That's why he said, I give you a new commandment: love people like I loved you. This would have been new in a sense, new in that nobody was doing that. Most of the people weren't doing this, loving other people, love your brothers and stuff, like the way I love you, this way, not some other way. This would be new to most people, to everyone. So since he said love the Father and love your neighbor as yourself, he lived that and approved of everything the Father said. He didn't do away with it. He didn't do away with all of that and then give two commandments that have nothing behind it. Kind of like our dollar, the money today. It has nothing behind it. It's just paper. That's what Christians reduce it to. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's what they say. That's his command. We should only follow that command. What's that mean? It's not just some fairy tale words that people make up. What's love your neighbor as yourself means? To do all those things. Summed up like that. To live all those things out in the Spirit properly. To do them. What's it mean to love the Father? Oh, just empty words. I love you, Father, today. I love you. Is that what he was teaching? They reduce it to two things and take all of that behind there and say that's all done away with. That's literally what they do. It's all done away with. And then we got two things that are empty, that has no backing, no gold behind it. Take away all the gold, the actual real money. Real money is gold and silver. You know, that's the way it was established. That's the true way for the economy. They take all of that away and say, believe in paper money. It's the same thing. There's no value. It's paper. It burns up. There's nothing. That's what they do with the commandments. They falsely teach that he taught that he did away with all the other things and said, do two empty, vain things that have no meaning now, no definition. They're just words. There's no definition. There's nothing behind it. But let's go along with the common teaching then. Keep his commandments, not what the Father said. Messiah said do those two things. He did away with all the rest and says those two things are what we should do. Only, you know, that have no backing, no definition, nothing behind it, no love behind it. Just empty, dead words, you know. Serial killer could go, I love you, and then he kills you the next day. Well, how valuable, you know? You gonna believe the serial killer that he says he loves someone? It's laughable, mockery. So let's go along with follow only his words. See where that leads us. Messiah commanded, man shall not. Jews, Gentiles, Jews, no, man, all mankind. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word of the Father that proceeds out of his mouth. For Jews only, for a few short years only, and then it goes away, or whatever Christianity teaches. For Jews only, as they commonly teach, because he's racist and partial. The Father only gives commandments to a small group of people. Everyone else, they're holy by some other gate, some other way. Jews are holy by keeping his commandments, but everyone else is holy by some other door that says do away with all that. We do whatever we want. Just more nasty contradictions, just like you get in those pseudo books, which means that what that means is that these books are assigned to, they tell you this is the author, but they're actually just people that lived 100, 200 years before Messiah that are not the actual people. That's a lie. Okay, it's a lie, just like Christianity lies. Love your neighbor as yourself is a lie, the way they teach that. The very first chapter and verse of Enoch is a lie. Chapter 1, verse 1, the book of the Watchers, the words of the blessing of Enoch. Lies. The words of the blessing of Enoch, with which he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. Now, I did that long video about these three books. I'm not going to go over it again, about how so many lies are just in the first verse. That's the devil for you. It's the devil spirits that wrote this. First of all, Enoch is blessing everyone. The words of the blessing of Enoch. And then he blessed a man. He blessed all the elect and righteous who will be living in the day of tribulation, when then also all the wicked and godless are to be removed. That whole verse has like multiple lies in there, literally. Verse 1, chapter 1. Minimum of 3 or 4 lies in one verse, the very first verse. Isn't that amazing? Amazing. No, not all the wicked are going to be removed. I did the video on it. I don't want to go and make a big circle about that. The earth will be burned up and few men left. Few men left. Not all will be wiped out, you know. But anyways, just like those lies and contradictions, so they also teach with Christianity because it was written in such a way, written in parables, that they're blinded and they can't see the truth. It has to be given. They have to want the truth, and they don't want the truth. They drool over what the false prophet in the churches say, who got it from the previous false prophet, who got it from the previous false prophet, who got it from the previous false, and this goes all the way back to Constantine. They just handed down tradition after tradition. That's where they learned it from, and then they accuse you of learning things from strange places like the internet and other people. They're hypocrites. Where did they learn all their teachings, all these ministers and elders? Oh, what all of them before have taught, what their minister and elder taught all their life while they grew up. They just regurgitate the same things. Severe hypocrisy, isn't it? False accusations of the devil. That's what devil means, false accuser. So can man live by bread alone? Did the Israelites inherit the promised land? I guess there's no Christians in this room to answer that, but the answer is no. They did not. Did they live by bread? For 40 years, every day, every week, when they, every week of those 40 years, someone proved this wrong. But this is what I see in his word. That's what it teaches. For 40 years, they were fed manna, bread from heaven. They ate that type, which is of the true thing, spiritual bread. It's not literal bread, and it didn't literally fall from the sky like Christianity teaches the Messiah did. Another Messiah that came from divinity, not from the flesh, not in the flesh, the natural way. That's a whole nother doctrine, lies from the devil. Anti-Messiah, Antichrist. This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Messiah came in the flesh. You're an Antichrist if you believe he came from divinity and fell like literal bread from heaven. But this bread is symbolic of the true bread that was to be. And, it's not that the spiritual understanding didn't exist. It always was there. The law was always spiritual. But anyways, the Israelites ate 40 years of bread, and they did not inherit the promised land. Why? Why? Because they didn't live by every word. They only ate bread most of the time. They had whatever else too, that don't take it too literally, but they lived off of bread only, if you will. For 40 years they were fed bread. And like the other teacher, that said this, I fully agree with it, and it's a legitimate teaching to teach on. They lived off that bread from heaven, and they didn't inherit the promised land. Why? What's the answer? Why? They could eat all the bread they want, and they didn't inherit. They didn't make it to the promised land. So then, why is it different now? Why would Messiah say it's different now? That's why he said, man shall not live by bread alone. And he is the bread from heaven. It's pretty obvious he says that's not the true bread. The true bread comes from heaven. Messiah is the bread, the life, the way, the bread that you eat spiritually, the food. But if you eat that alone, will you inherit the kingdom? No, you won't, because the Israelites didn't inherit the promised land. The physical example so you could understand something spiritual. That's it. Very simple. Christianity is thrown in the garbage, their doctrines, all of them, in one hit, one blow, just by teaching man shall not live by bread alone, a commandment to the disciples and to them, of which they all agree and say, yeah, we should keep his commandments. We should keep his commandments only, not the law, not every word. That's what they're saying. Well, one of his commandments are live by bread, man shall not live by bread alone. The Israelites did that, and they didn't inherit the promised land. Very simple, very easy to see and understand. So is that still true, or did the Father change? Did he change? No, he didn't change. People who say Jesus, Jesus, and live by bread alone aren't going to inherit the kingdom. Hope you could see that. Uh, massive lies in this world today, massive lies. The faith that they promote is some kind of no faith with any gold behind it. There's nothing behind it. It's just words, faith. Just believe and say, I love you, Jesus. Just do that. Fall off your chair and you're saved. It's a 7-second prayer. Just do that. That's what the Israelites did, and they didn't inherit the promised land. They said, we will do everything you command us. Yeah, Christians say, we believe, we follow him, we'll do everything Jesus tells us to do. Guess what? They didn't inherit the promised land. Tell me what Christian doctrine, what denomination won't be thrown in the ocean with the millstone, spiritually speaking, with this teaching. All of them are false. All of them are false. Their foundation is corrupt because they don't live by every word. They don't believe his words. They don't believe that he's the bread from heaven, even though they'll do a sermon and say he's the true bread. Then when you tell them man shall not live by bread alone, that he's talking about Messiah. Man shall not live by me, Messiah alone. They don't believe that bread refers to him, even though he's speaking parables. Without a parable, he did not speak. And he spoke parables so that so that people don't understand him. The people that don't seek truth, that they don't understand him. It's a parable. And the parable reflects and goes back to, the Israelites. They lived off bread. They lived off bread for 40 years. They ate the bread. Christians eat the Jesus. They eat spiritually. They have the faith. They eat the bread every day, 40 years, their whole life, And why on earth did they not inherit the kingdom or promised land? Sure lines up with, this is the reason. Many will say, Master, Master, I've done many things. Healed people, cast out foul spirits. And he'll say, I never knew you, workers of lawlessness. That throws it down all of Christianity, all itself, one verse. Workers of lawlessness. They did away with all the laws and just say, love God and love Jesus and love your neighbor. It's just theology in their head, nothing to back it. No instructions on how to do it, nor do they intend to do it. And this, once you have a truth, whatever truth it is in Scripture, once you have it, no one can contradict it. Now, people can get angry and start making up stuff, but I know that they can't contradict this. If they could, I would see it, and it would frighten me a little, because then we would have massive contradictions. But it doesn't exist. No one can contradict this. If you believe in the Messiah of Scripture, then you will live by every word that proceeds out of his mouth, because that's one of his commandments. So it's interesting how they say that he didn't teach to do all these things, even though he was living it every day. He lived the Father's commandments. A living example should be enough. Should be enough. Follow me. What's that mean? Well, follow, what did he do? Whatever he did, you follow him. You do that. Not complicated. So they create their own definition of what follow me means, and what love your neighbor means, and what love the Father means. And they totally reject his commandment, one of his commandments, to man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. It's scary how deceived this world is. Once you start seeing the truth, it's scary how many false prophets and false servants and believers there are that reject truth, that reject the Messiah, but they come in his name and say they believe in him. Scary. Peace, that's all I have on this one. Consider these things, Can you contradict it? You can't, you can't.